Hello, everyone. Welcome to another week of Education 523. Hope you're having a great week. If you notice, I'm actually coming to you from my office at Shepherd and not from home. So, hey, different background. Anyway, before we jump into this week, we're coming up on everything so fast. We're coming up to the end of the 7 weeks, which I guess is midterm or the end of the first 7 week classes. So, whoa. Anyway, a quick shout out. I know I sent an email. The discussions post the last few weeks have been phenomenal. Actually, they've been phenomenal the whole year, their whole semester. But 3 and 4 were I thought, knocked out of the park. Everyone wrote nice, detailed responses, great examples, made connections to their own experiences. If you've not had a chance to check them out, please do. Again, they're very good. And just thank you. I tried to put some comments on there. I'd like to, even if they're not the longest comments, I just want you to know that I am reading them. They're good. So other than that, you may know that just from looking at the other ones, but awesome. Keep up the good work with the last couple assignments. Next thing, I'm going to share my screen. We're going to kind of switch books this week. We're kind of done Flat World. Some of the themes in Flat World are still going to rear their heads, though. One, with the action plan. Two, she talks so much about other countries in that we're going to narrow our focus on other countries and kind of look at their educational systems and maybe if we can employ some of those in the local area, nationally, whatever. But we're going to focus mainly on Finland for this class, just in terms of the books, because Finland is always seen as being here in the world of education. But one reason I picked Finnish Lessons 3.0 and not like 1.0 or 2.0, the Finnish Lessons 3.0 is written post-pandemic. So there's some trends that he has noticed where Finland's not scoring as high as it once did on some things. So we're going to talk about some of that. I will admit this week I'm probably going to talk a lot about the action plan and a little bit about Finland, and then next week we'll really dive into Finland. But this week you got to read chapters 1 and 2. The syllabus itself, let's just look at it. Excuse me. Excuse me. Go down here. This week, action plan is the big thing. It's the big assignment in the class. I'm going to talk about it here in a second and then finish lessons 1 and 2. You can read ahead, no problems, but just kind of keeping everyone on track. For this week, though, I'm going to go ahead and talk about the action plan first, and then we'll talk about finished lessons. All right, the action plan. The action plan, I think, is pretty straightforward, but you can do this either from an action plan or, a strategic plan for changes in your school or ways that your schools can address the goals listed below that I'll talk about. Or some people have asked in the past, and I don't have a problem with it because I really just want you to kind of think about the goals themselves. If they can focus on like the classroom environment and their individual classrooms, that's fine. There was one question on recruiting you might have to be a little creative with if you want to go that route, but I've seen people do different things for it. But basically, this is an action plan on changes that you could see within your school to be more effective. A lot of it has to do with diversity. And things of that nature, and just trying to make a more well-rounded school in terms of different lenses, different approaches, having a diverse faculty, and things like that. So let me just kind of highlight everything. One, in case you need to know, an action plan should have a set of strategic goals. It should have a sequence of activities, like ways you're going to address those goals. Who are the stakeholders for each activity, and then a time frame. So if you're going to have a professional development come in and be met or be done at your school, maybe what's the time frame that you want to have that done? Maybe the time frame you want to see some changes, something like that. I can put up some examples of action plans if you need to. Directions, this needs to be 3 to 5 pages. I will say this, I would say hope that you're closer to 5 pages than 3, because this can get a little lengthy. The other thing is you can go over 5 pages if you need to. I'm not going to penalize for that. Sometimes some people have a lot of ideas. I want you to think about this almost like a utopian society where, funding isn't always going to be an issue. This is an ideal situation. 5 pages, double spaced, 12 Times New Roman, 3 to 5 pages. And that's 3 to 5 pages for the whole paper, not the entire goal. Like you don't have to do each goal in 5 pages. That would be a pretty lengthy paper in a week, 25. Anyway, all right, the assignment itself, using the goals listed below, you're going to provide an action plan or techniques that your school could use to achieve each of the goals. You can address each goal as its own entity. If you prefer, you can look at the goals in terms of your individual classroom instead of school. What I mean by you can look at each goal as its own entity, I've seen this done a couple different ways. I'm fine with either way. Most people actually look at goal 1 and say creating a sustained, welcoming, supportive, and inclusive school, classroom, and school. And then they address that in the action plan. And then they do goal 2, and then they do goal 3. Some people like to talk about it and blend it all together. I'm fine with that also. I mean, I will say most people do each individual goal, but again, as long as everything's addressed, I'm fine. Now, the goals themselves, I just did one, but your first one is creating a welcoming and supportive and inclusive school. How are you going to do that? Again, think of different ways. Goal 2, how are you going to get attract and retain a greater number of individuals from historically underrepresented populations in the ranks of schools faculty? This is something we've talked about with Flat World. I think I've talked about the experiences even in our teacher preparation programs. We're trying, but we needed more diversity in our teacher population. And how would you address that problem? What are ways you think you could get a diverse populations in your school? And again, be creative, think about it. I mean, it can be paid more money. It's however you think it can be done. But just make sure you back that up. Make sure that you, number 3, ensure that teachers maintain being current on diversity trends. So basically, I think what I'm trying to say there with goal 3, how are you going to keep your faculty current on education, diversity, such and such trends? Again, goal 3. Goal 4, how are you going to strengthen partnerships within the community, within your local area? I know a lot of schools already do things. Maybe you can note those and expand on it. And goal 5, how are you going to have a curriculum that has multicultural perspectives, i.e., how are you going to diversify your curriculum to have different lenses and from different points of view? Some of these goals may actually overlap. Like I think in some regards, number 2 and number 5 kind of work together, and you can reference that. I don't know if I have it on here. You do need, I didn't mention, this needs to be an APA format, and you need to have at least 5 sources on a bibliography page. The bibliography page does not count within the page total. I get asked that sometimes, so it's a separate page. It's not in the 3 to 5. But APA format, I'm assuming everyone, if you're in graduate school at this point, knows APA format, but if not, can put up some links and stuff, or you can just email and ask. That's the action plan. Again, that's the assignment this week. It's one of the bigger ones, so I want to make sure you had time to do it. And I know some people may have already started it. But if you have any questions, please don't hesitate. So now for the week, I have a video. I'm going to see how long-winded I get. I'm kind of scared to play it because I know YouTube sometimes has guidelines about playing videos within videos. So I'm going to post this, but this video gives a nice overview of Finland itself and their education system. It's by Michael Moore. I know he's controversial. I think this video, though, is really well done. It's about 9 minutes long, and it just gives a good overview of how Finland operates and why their education system has been so important. Let me rephrase that. So effective. It's important because a lot of people study it, but it's been very effective. It was made pre-pandemic, so there are some things, like I said, that might have changed, but I think by and large, the heart of the system is still there. I wanted to just kind of give you a few highlights, though, on a few things. Let me make sure I got them. Finland itself, sorry, this is a screenshot, but in case you don't know, this is a social studies teacher in me slightly. Just so you know, though, the country we're going to be mainly looking at in our education system is Finland. It's Scandinavian. It's wedged in between Sweden and Russia. So it kind of gets a nice mix of Eastern Europe and Western Europe. Usually population floats between 5 and 6 million people. Yeah, used to be part of Sweden. It is a parliament. It has a democratic type government, parliamentary democracy. It's a member of the EU, and actually this is not updated. They are part of NATO now. That just happened within the last year. If you've been watching the news, they have 2 official languages, Finnish and Swedish. And there's service trade and most of their jobs, manufacturing, finance, business. very advanced. They're very known for being small but mighty. Like I say, their education system is very much modeled. A lot of people go there and study it. Even though the population is mainly Finnish, it's still a lot of people like the ways that they approach. I know there's a principal in Berkeley County I know fairly well, and when she went over, she actually studied the country and actually employed some of their techniques in how she administrates maybe a little longer recess time, things like that. The video talks about a lot of that, so I don't want to rehash it too much, but I'll talk about that next week. So that's the overview of the country itself. Now, some other things just to kind of note, and I did mention it's mostly homogenous. The population is mainly Swedish, Finnish, and that's something that some people do talk about. Like here in the United States, we have a very diverse population, and that's something we're going to talk. Obviously, in the action plan, we need to address. So sometimes some people feel like that there's different issues that maybe larger countries face than smaller countries like Finland do, and I think that is an important caveat to note as you're reading. And he talks about that, by the way. All right. This again's screenshot, but I'm actually one of the individuals isn't on here. But as far as like how teachers are seen, the education system is in Finland is very, very, very trusted, which I think I would say it's obviously a negative here in the United States, where right now, rightly or wrongly, I would say wrongly, the education system here is not. The proper respect I don't think is given. And in Finland, the education system has about basically an 89 to 90% approval rating. Police are also, I think, are at 90, they got cut off. But as you can see, the public institutions are very highly thought of in Finland. Now, there is a reason for this, and I'm going to talk about that here in a second. And it's about their teacher training program. But it's, again, it's a government. They're a very centralized government. And in a lot of ways, it's something here. I don't know, some things that they do, I don't know would work here because of the tax rate, where we don't tax as much as they do. I mean, I don't want to get into the socialism versus, capitalistic type debate here. That's a good debate to have, but more online. But they do have a high tax rate. So some of the services that they offer are because you're paying for it. It's a tax rate. And again, there's a lot of people that would say, well, we need to go to that. And might be something that you mentioned in your action plan or something along those lines. Anything else I wanted to make sure we had? Finland. A few things too, when you're watching the video, I want you to kind of note. Young people learn well in schools with low performance differences. They don't do a lot of placements, and you remember they don't do a lot of tracking and things like that. So students in a grade are all usually together. They also don't start, the video talks about this. Most kids don't start school until they're 7, and the school days are shorter. They also get more recess time, but also it's kind of, they have a philosophy, I guess, of a rising tide lifts all ships, where students who might be struggling with something, if they're placed with all of them, their peers, eventually, I just did something on the cone of learning or the cone of experience, and it talks a little bit about how teaching each other is the highest form of retention. And I think that falls a little bit into this. Also, teaching itself is seen as Flat World Education talks about this, but teaching is a very prestigious field in Finland. So they're attracting high quality candidates. So with that being said, when you go, you have to have a master's to teach, or you have to be, I think, in a master's program. And they're very rigorous programs where doctors, lawyers, teachers are kind of seen on that same tier, so to speak. So a lot of people want to get into that field. Finnish teachers also, kind of gets into it. It's very, very competitive, and teachers from outside Finland try to go in there and teach. Again, it's the prestige with it, and it's a higher paid based on other jobs. The salaries are higher than some. Most people stay in it for life because they enjoy it. There's not a high burnout rate. And I have it down here. Sorry, I got cut off. But one thing I do want to say is they also don't have a whole lot of private schools, because the public schools are seen as being so top notch. People just say, why am I going to pay for something when there's something better right down the street? So that's kind of an overview. They're going to get into that in the video, and the video is about 9 minutes, but I would highly recommend watching it. It'll give you a good overview besides and supplement to the book. that is that. Let me make sure I have everything else on here. Trusted overview. I'll make sure I'm not overlooking anything down. Teachers, they are highly unionized in Finland. 96% of all teachers belong to a union. And again, I mentioned this, but teachers must have a bachelor's degree there. So with that being said, I think that's the highlight of the week. I tell you what, I'm going to risk it. I'm going to go ahead and play the video because I think if it's on here or either way that you watch it is fine, but I can point out a few things because I do want you to kind of get notes on this and just, I think it does a nice job. So let me go ahead and hit it. And I think it'll give me a few points to talk off of.
So here's what happened. Back in the day, Finland's schools sucked on the level that ours suck on. When they tested the world's kids, both Finland and us were usually about the same, somewhere down the list of nations. But Finland didn't like that. So they tried some new ideas and
I will say this is what I mean. I stopped. One thing that they do, they kind of based their system clear up through the 70s on the US system of education. And this is where he's talking about where they started to change some things. So
in no time, Finland shot to the top of the world. Their students were number one. How did they do that? That was the one question I wanted an answer to, and I went straight to see the enemy's Minister of Education. Before I could say anything, she blurted out their top secret.
They do not have homework.
Wait, so you reduced the homework you've given them at school?
Yes. They should have more time to be kids, to be youngsters, to enjoy the life.
How many hours of homework did you get last night?
About 10 minutes or something.
10 minutes of homework.
Yeah. Maybe 15 minutes or 20 minutes.
20 minutes, but 20 minutes. Yeah.
Well, if I would have done the homework, I think it would be like 10 minutes tops.
Usually I don't really do homework that much. The whole term, homework, is kind of obsolete, I think. In that way, that your homework is obsolete. Yeah. In that way, that these kids, they have a lot other things to do after school. Like what? Like being together, like being with the family, like doing sports, like playing music, like reading. So they have no homework. What if all they want to do is climb a tree?
They could climb a tree. Yeah, they can climb a tree, then they learn how to climb a tree. But they'll end up, while climbing the tree, probably finding out about different insects, and they can come to school next day telling me about what they found.
Compared to the older kids, how many hours a day do the younger ones go to school?
oops. All right, let's play that.
Mondays, 3 hours. Tuesdays, 4 hours. It varies. It's 20 hours a week.
So they're, oh man. Now, does this 3 or 4 hours at school include the lunch hour?
Yes.
How are they learning anything? How are you getting anything done?
Your brain has to relax every now and then. If you just constantly work, then you stop learning. And there's no use of doing that for a longer period of time.
Finland students have the shortest school days and the shortest school years in the entire Western world. They do better by going to school less. How many languages do you speak? English, yeah, Swedish, Spanish.
Finnish and Swedish, Finnish, English and German,
French, German,
Finnish and English.
English, Swedish and French and Spanish.
So you were an exchange student in the US?
Yeah.
When you got back here in school, what did you notice that you felt relieved about?
No more multiple choice exams. They
No multiple choice exams here?
were, or very few of them, if any. Because
Really?
all of my exams in the
How
US,
do you answer the question right if it isn't listed as one of the 4 choices?
you write your answer.
You have to know it.
Yeah.
You actually have to know it.
Yeah.
If there was one thing I heard over and over again from the Finns, it was that America should stop teaching to a standardized test. Get rid of those standardized tests.
national testing.
Standardized tests.
Standardized testings.
What you are teaching your students is to do well on those tests, and you're not really teaching them anything.
No, we are teaching them. We're teaching them how to flunk a test, and then a bunch of schools fail the test.
and those schools are turned into charter schools, and then somebody makes a lot of money.
But school is about finding your happiness, finding finding a way to learn what makes you happy.
They figure now about 1/3 of the school time the students are in school is spent preparing for the standardized test. And so they've eliminated a lot of things that aren't on the test. So music is gone, art is gone, poetry is gone. Yeah, in many schools. Civics isn't even on the test. So now schools are dropping
Really?
civics, yes. Civics, American civics.
Okay. Unbelievable.
We got rid of poetry.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah.
Why?
It's a waste of time. When are they ever gonna learn? When are they ever gonna speak as poets when they're adults? How does that help them get a job?
We try to teach them everything that they need so that they could actually use their brain as well as they can, including PE, including arts, including music, anything that can actually make brain.
He will talk about this in the book a little bit, and you'll hear him talk about a lot of the sports when they talk about that free time. I will say sports are not usually tied to schools too much in European schools, especially, but I think that is the case in Finland. They have club sports and things like that. So they have sports, they're just not like how we have sports, if that makes sense.
Work that's up. The children need to be baking, they should be singing, they should be doing art and going on nature walks and doing all these things because there's this very short time that they're allowed to be children.
If you don't have standardized tests here in Finland, how do you know which schools are the best? You know, people need a list.
The neighborhood school is the best school. It is not different than the school which can be, for example, situated in the town center, because all the schools in Finland, they are all equal. When we move to a new city, we never ask where the best school is. It's never a question.
So nobody has to shop for schools.
There's nothing different in any of our schools. We're the same.
It is illegal in Finland to set up a school and charge tuition. That's why, for the most part, private schools don't exist. And what that means is that the rich parents have to make sure that the public schools are great.
And that's where I was kind of getting into where I mentioned the rising tide lifts all ships. That's kind of that philosophy. So
And by making the rich kids go to school with everyone else, they grow up with those other kids as friends. And when they become wealthy adults, they have to think twice before they screw them over.
In the United States, education is a business. There are corporations making money. Here, it's so student-centered that when we had to redo our playground, they had the architects come in and talk to the kids. For the
Will they
playground.
listen to?
Yes, there are things on our playgrounds that the students really wanted.
Being in school here is more independent.
We're created more like adults than in the United States.
Yeah.
I mean, we
that is also very true. I know their high schools are very much, if we looked at it, it would look like somewhat like a college here. Where they come in and they have select times and they might not be at school all day. They might have different class times.
don't need a hall pass to go to the bathroom class.
Yeah.
We'll see students commuting on the subway, even as young as 7 and 8, going on their own to school.
When I started doing teacher training practice back in the US, I was in these certain neighborhoods teaching these kids and telling them, you can be anything you want to be when you grow up. This is kind of a lie. And when I came to Finland, a lot of my teaching is based on what the kids want and what they see for their future. So it doesn't feel so false to say you can really be whatever you want to be when you grow up, because they're making it happen already. They already have such power.
That's upsetting. To think about that. That our kids don't have that. That's really beautiful.
It's not that we have figured out something that nobody else has done in education. That's wrong. many of these things that
By the way, that's the author of the book.
have made Finland perform well in education are initially American ideas.
We try to teach them to think for themselves and to be critical to what they're learning.
We try to teach them to be happy person, to be respect others and respect yourself.
You're concerned with their happiness.
Oh yeah,
What the hell do you teach?
I teach math.
So the math teacher says the first thing out of your mouth of what you wanted these students to get out of school was to be happy, have a happy life.
Yep.
And you're the math teacher.
When do they have their time to play and socialize with their friends and grow as human beings? Because there's so much more life around than just school.
You want them to play,
I want children to play.
and that was the principle. I'm planning the American flag right here in the middle of your school and claiming this great idea for us.
Thanks for stealing it.
Yeah, that's how we roll.
All right.
Whoops, don't need to watch it again. Couple of things though on that. The video is posted, and I do want to make a few points that I had written down earlier. One, I think it's important to note, like they said, a lot of these ideas that they're doing, they do have roots in the US. And they've just kind of modified it, and they've done their own thing on some aspects of it. Two, it is important to note there are things that they do that might work there that don't work here. There you can I'll put some materials up. But I do think there is some validity to a lot of things. Of course, we've talked about it even with like Flat World, you know, the amount of standardized testing, a balanced curriculum. She mentioned even in that not having like you're losing arts as a social studies teacher, you're losing civics, things like that. That's not necessarily a good thing, at least in my opinion. So anyway, check out the video this week though. Just kind of absorb the ideas that are going here. We're going to talk more about them next week because I want you to focus on that action plan a lot this week. Next week we'll focus on a little more on Finland and maybe some worldwide global trends. Also, one thing you're going to have to do next week, you're going to have to pick a country and we're going to look at some of these trends and you're going to kind of compare it to Finland and the US and things like that. So I'll get into that next week though. So don't lose so much sleep over that. Big thing, action plan. That's it. Like I say, I just wanted to do a little intro to Finland. I thought the video did a really nice job of that and just kind of me babbling a little more on it. But we'll talk a lot next week. Don't forget the action plans. I'm going to go ahead and stop my share so you can actually see me wave goodbye. Whoops. And I think that should be it. So I hope everyone's hanging in there. I hope the semester's going well. If you need any help with anything, do not hesitate to contact me, and I will see you next week. Thanks. Bye.